Hello and welcome to Control+F, the NSI Cyber and Tech Centers podcast. This season, we're bringing you a series of sessions from one of the nation's leading cyber events, the National Cyber Innovation Forum 2026. I'm Jamil Jaffer, the founder and executive director of the National Security Institute at George Mason University's Antonin Scalia Law School. And I'm thrilled today to have with me Andrew McClure, the founder and man behind the NCIF and a senior fellow here at NSI Cyber and Tech Center. Thanks for being here, Andrew.
Yeah, folks, thanks, Jamil.
No, appreciate you being here. So, folks, look, as you know, it's typical over the summer, NSI's podcast, Fault Lines, takes something of a hiatus, and we run a season of the Control+F podcast. And this year is no different. Well, actually, it's a little bit different because this year we're going to be running the Control+F podcast on Mondays and Wednesdays for the July 4th holiday, America's 250th anniversary, all the way through the Labor Day holiday in September. While on Fridays, you'll get your now weekly dose of the Fault Lines crew doing their fun Fridays episodes. So over the next 9 weeks, you're getting a chance to go inside the National Cyber Innovation Forum, or NCIF, as part of Control+F, and you're going to get a little bit of your Fault Lines fix on Fridays. Now, before we jump in to talk about NCIF, which is in its fourth year this year of bringing together senior leaders from across government, industry, venture capital, and technology to confront the most urgent cyber and national security threats facing the U.S., I want to talk a little bit about you, Andrew, about your background, about how you ended up creating NCIF. Now, for the audience, I know a little bit of the story because Andrew and I have been friends and colleagues for a long time now, going back, about a decade, when I was a new senior executive at a hot cyber startup run by the former director of NSA, the founding commander of Cyber Command, General Alexander, and Andrew's a key player at one of our company's key venture capital backers, Forgepoint Capital. But Andrew, let's go back a little bit from when you and I met. Let's talk about your journey here today. So, how did you first get into cybersecurity and investing? And since our listeners might not know about your background, tell us a little bit about your history too, about your time at the Naval Academy and how it shaped your career.
Yeah, Jamil, well, first of all, thanks for having me join this. This is such an important topic and glad to do that. You know, I often say a lot, looking at your career, it often doesn't make sense until you look at it in reverse. And I think we have the benefit now and, a decade or two behind us and see where we've been able to come from and also where the industry is going. But, if you want to start at the Naval Academy, I'll tell you what, that's an area, again, looking forward as a young man. It's not a college that I aspired to go to, and then 9/11 hit, and I was part of many in my generation who said, you know what, let's answer the call to service. How can we do that? And not knowing much, not having really family members who had done that, heard that this was a place where I could be a Marine. I heard that they were also the best. So, started from a very basic position, but I think what it comes down to is I went there, and you'll see this thread throughout the later part in the career too. I went to the Naval Academy because I wanted to serve. What the Academy really instilled in me was a mindset of solving hard problems, leading under pressure, and recognizing that national security is ultimately about people and institutions and not just technology. So after I graduated there, I became an intelligence officer in the Marine Corps. And over time, I found myself increasingly working at the intersection of intelligence, signals intelligence, cyber operations, and in many ways, emerging technologies. So as cyber has become central to every, in this case, military operation, I realized early on in my career that many of the most important innovations weren't coming anymore from government. They were coming from startups and entrepreneurs. And that led eventually me into venture capital. At Forgepoint Capital, I've had the opportunity to work with founders building technologies that protect critical infrastructure, enterprises, and other leading businesses throughout the world. So what I love is that both careers, first in the military and then, of course, later on in the private sector, have really been about the same mission, and that's strengthening our country's security. So one happened in the uniform, the other happens by helping innovative companies succeed.
I love that. And I want to talk more about your military career and your career as an investor as well. But I do want to talk a little bit about your educational background, because you didn't just go to the Naval Academy. You went to the Kennedy School at Harvard. You went to MIT Sloan School of Management. You went to the Australian National University too. How does all that happen?
Well, again, Jamil, I've been incredibly blessed throughout my career to have a number of interesting opportunities. I would say from each one of those institutions, I've learned a little bit something different. And, like many junior officers, after serving for just shy of 7 years as an active duty Marine Corps officer, decided, time was right to go back to graduate school. So I did that. I had done a joint degree at the Harvard Kennedy School and MIT. And there was really a common thread on the one, studying business and entrepreneurship, innovation. On the other, really the public policy challenges and national security challenges and the decisions policymakers have to shape. And that was really after, too, I'd done coursework at the Australian National University, which had really focused my own understanding across the Indo-Pacific region, as well as really acquiring a degree in what was defense technology, strategic studies, and national security studies. So had really been focused on a lot of these issues throughout the early part of my career, and then of course later, not just academically, but also on the business side.
Well, I think it's really important because I think it's what it brings to your capabilities, your investment experience, your serving in the military. So I do want to talk about your service. You're currently obviously serving our nation today, and thank you for that service. As a reservist, as an intel officer in the Marine Corps. But prior to your current reserve duties, you served on active duty, as you mentioned, these cross-functional teams: Afghanistan, the Middle East, East Africa, Australia. And you talked about this focus on SIGINT and cyber operations. So tell us a little bit more about that experience and how that shaped you as an individual and you as an investor today.
Well, Jamil, I've been fortunate to serve alongside incredible service members over the years, both on active duty and for the last dozen years as a reservist in the Marine Corps. That was an incredibly formative part of my own career. Many of the members I was able to serve with, some of whom have gone on to become founders, successful CISOs, policymakers. We put together a venue every year at RSA and Black Hat with these kinds of leaders who are also bound by this common thread of supporting the country, national security. So my assignments in uniform have taken me to Afghanistan, the Middle East, East Africa, in Australia and elsewhere, where I've worked on intelligence, signals intelligence, and cyber-related missions. Those experiences have reinforced to me that our adversaries are constantly adapting. Cyber isn't separate from military operations anymore. It's woven now into everything. And we've seen this now in the maturation of many of the commands you see across the services. And so one thing I appreciate about serving in the Marine Corps Reserve today is that I still get to bring lessons from the commercial technology world back into government, while also bringing an understanding of government back to the challenges we meet in industry.
Well, I love that. And we've seen a lot of that in the current administration. We've seen them bringing in a lot of folks from industry into DOD, into DOW, into the White House, and the likes. I think it's really, really important. Well, let's actually jump over now to the National Cyber Innovation Forum. Talk to us about how you came to launch NCIF, 3-4 years ago, and how it's evolved in the 3 events prior to this year's event. What gave you the idea to start NCIF, and what are your favorite highlights from the prior 3 years before this one?
Well, Jamil, many industries have trade shows and they accommodate commercial businesses, and they're very focused on the lingo of commerce. And then, of course, in areas where there's government focus, then you tend to have these clusters of federally organized events. But there was really nothing that brought together these two worlds in a way that says, how do we desperately need each other, but we don't spend enough time talking to each other. And so the government has an extraordinary mission and deep operational experience. We know that. The industry is also moving faster than ever, particularly in areas around AI and cybersecurity. Yet too often they meet only during procurement or in a crisis. So what I wanted to do was create a forum where policymakers, government leaders, investors, entrepreneurs, CISOs, technologists, they could have an honest conversation before problems become emergencies. So every year we've tried to raise the bar with the NCIF. It started modestly as a small working group, really had grown from there, had been fortunate to have several embassies, the Australian embassy, the Canadian embassies host us. We've expanded the audience, elevated the speakers, brought in the topics, and focused on practical collaboration instead of simply discussing problems. So one of my favorite parts each year is watching conversations continue long after the panel ends. And that's where I believe partnership really forms.
No, I love that. And I love this idea of collaboration. We talk about public-private partnerships. We talk about collaboration all the time, but it's rare that we actually get a chance to do it, like you say, outside of a crisis scenario. So I love I love that you've built NCIF and built NCIF to do it that way. So talk to us about the goal of NCIF, and I know it's about collaboration, right? But what is it really designed to do, and why is that particular role so important? Like in the current moment that we see, obviously, we're hearing a lot about AI, about Mythos, a lot of that. We'll get into that here shortly, but talk to us about the overall goal of NCIF, and then we'll get into the details about this year's conference.
Well, the mission is quite simple: accelerate collaboration across cybersecurity to strengthen America's national security. So the pace of technological change has never been faster. Government cannot innovate alone, and industry cannot secure the nation alone. So NCIF really exists to bring together the people making decisions, building technology, investing capital, writing policy, defending networks. And if we shorten the distance between those communities, everyone benefits. Ultimately, the conference isn't about just cybersecurity. It's really about national resilience and collaboration.
Yeah, look, I think national resilience is the key to this whole thing, because the reality is we're going to keep getting hit in the cyber domain. There's no question about that. We've got to push back harder. There's no question we got to do that. But because we continue to get hit, we've got to be more resilient, and it's not going to happen. The government can't do it without industry. So it's so important that we're doing this together. And it's interesting because this year you asked NSI. You've long been a fellow with NSI, a senior fellow with NSI, but this year you asked us to partner with other key leaders, industry players like Forgepoint, your employer, Carasoft, Forescout, Snowflake, Booz Allen, Data Tribe, Knox, Okta, Paladin Capital, Palo Alto, Shellman, Aiken, CoreStack, SailPoint, Gulatech Adventures. Incontel, Surefire Cyber, Worldwide Technology, ARC, SEPA. It was a cast of awesome folks. And you asked them to come. You asked them to come to bring together those folks, help launch and lead the fourth NCIF for the first time to help the U.S. Capitol. Give us a preview. What are the listeners going to hear over the next 9 weeks, 2 episodes a week? What are they going to hear about on this season of Control F? Who are the key speakers? What do they talk about? What was hot at NCIF this year?
Well, this year's event was the biggest and most ambitious yet. Thanks for the shout out. We had 20 partners to make this happen. Without them, none of this would have occurred. And all the names you've listed are leaders in their categories across the industry and very well respected. So we're incredibly blessed to partner with the best in the industry, and also the partnership we've had with NSI, I think, is only maturing here. So we've had an extraordinary lineup at this year's program in May, spanning participants from the White House, Congress, Department of Energy, National Security Agency, FBI, CISA, the National Security Council, and then across the venture capital community and CEOs from some of the most innovative cybersecurity and AI companies in the country. So listeners will hear over the course of this season discussions from President Trump's cyber strategy, AI, national defense, critical infrastructure, the role of offensive cyber operations, energy security. We did a panel on quantum, on talent acquisition, public-private collaboration, and of course, the future of American technology leadership. So there was a lot of ground that we were able to cover, and a strong diversity of organizations represented, both public and private. So what makes these conversations unique is that they're happening between leaders who normally don't share the stage.
I love that. It's happening in real time, right in front of the audience there, in front of all these leaders that were both speaking and participating. I love that how we brought people together. You know what was great about that? What I thought was great about NCIF this year was people came, they stayed, they listened to the conversations, they participated. And to your point, it wasn't just about what's happening on stage. It was the side conversations that were happening, those relations that were being built, that you built over the prior 3 years, people coming back together, seeing one another, having those conversations continuing. Now, Andrew, you were on stage for a good chunk of the day. You quarterbacked the whole day overall. But you're also a moderator for a number of discussions that day. Tell us about some of the highlights from your sessions that the listeners should look out for over the season of Control F. What were some of the most interesting insights that you thought you got out of your speakers?
Well, the program was stacked, and that's really a testament to our collaborators and those who really took the time to share the stage with us. So one thing that really stood out was how much alignment there is, not just in government or in industry, but there is around the urgency of maintaining America's technological advantage. So whether we were speaking with senior government officials, CEOs, or investors, everyone recognized that AI is fundamentally changing cybersecurity, both for defenders and attackers alike. So another recurring theme that kept coming up in panel after panel was speed, the speed of innovation. The traditional pace we've seen in government isn't keeping up with the pace of technology adoption anymore, or innovation. That doesn't mean government should abandon rigor. It doesn't mean that we need new models, of collaboration, but it does mean we need new models for partnering with innovative companies. So there was a strong sense of optimism throughout the day. The challenges were real. We talked about this in quantum and AI and energy, empowering that revolution. But so is the challenges are not only real, but so is America's innovation ecosystem. And that's, I think, the energy that everybody else brought to the stage over the course of the event.
Yeah, I love that. I do want to talk to you a little bit about sort of your view of the whole thing. And, this is to your point earlier, this is a real interesting moment in our nation and our cybersecurity journey. The tech and cyber worlds are abuzz with all the talk about AI. You just mentioned it, Anthropic's Mythos tool, ChatGPT 5.6 cyber and the like. The government's getting engaged at its own level, as we've seen. Talk to us about how you see this particular trend in the tech industry generally, in the cyber domain specifically. How should we think about AI and cyber?
Jamil, I think we're entering one of the most consequential technological transitions we've seen in decades. AI will dramatically improve cyber defense. We're seeing this. Security teams will detect threats faster. That's already happening in industry. They're automating investigations, and that's helping many in industry address also the workforce shortage. But the same technology has also lowered the barriers for attackers. So that's why I don't think the question is whether AI is good or bad. You've seen this come up time and time again in panels or in policy discussions. The question really is who develops it, who can deploy it responsibly, and whether democratic societies can maintain leadership over our authoritarian competitors. So the stakes are much higher, much larger than cybersecurity alone. AI will shape economic competitiveness, military advantage, and really geopolitical influence for decades to come.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm a big believer in the idea that, the AI revolution is going to be a tide that lifts all boats. It's really going to benefit the American economy, the economies of our friends and partners and allies. And I do think it's important that we remember this trend that you just mentioned about authoritarianism and its rise around the globe, and how we need to fight it back against that, and how sort of our values, democracy and freedom, are really the values that are universal and benefit all of mankind. I do want to come back to one thing. We are running short on time, and so I have just a couple more questions for you before we wrap up. I do want to come back to this idea that you talked about at the heart of NCIF, right? This idea of the government industry working together, collaborating on these issues. How important is that in this in this era of AI and rapid advancement? And and by the way, how's that collaboration going? Where do you think we're headed?
Well, it's essential. If you look across history, America's greatest technological advantages have come from collaboration across government, academia, entrepreneurs, investors, and industries. Cybersecurity is no different. Government understands the threats; they see it every day. Just like you and I have seen it earlier on in our career. Industry often can develop solutions to those challenges first. Investors then help scale those companies, and of course, academia produces talent in the research that really supports it all. So no single organization or discipline has all the answers. So I think what we're actually moving in a positive direction right now, and relationships here are becoming stronger. Information sharing is improving, and there's increasing recognition that innovation itself is a national security imperative.
I love that. I love innovation as national security imperative. I think that's exactly right. We've seen this administration talk a lot about that, and I love that you said that directly. I guess it's worth mentioning as we're wrap this sort of preview episode up. At the end of this year's NCIF, there was a special announcement that you and I collaborated on about a potential new event coming this winter, as well as a plan for next year's NCIF. What can you tell our listeners about that new event and the upcoming plan?
Well, Jamil, I think what the NCIF has shown is we've caught lightning in a bottle, right? This is an incredibly energizing event. So we're also very excited about what's ahead. And the event has grown much larger than I had ever imagined, much beyond just a single person. So this is a movement and it's not a venue. So at the close of this year's conference, many of our audience members will remember we announced plans to continue the conversation through a new winter event that will bring together leaders to focus on emerging issues between annual conferences. So we're already planning next year's National Cyber Innovation Forum. Our goal is to continue building what has become a trusted venue where senior government leaders, innovators, investors, and operators can have candid discussions about the technology shaping America's future. So the conference has grown every year. but our mission hasn't changed. If we can help build stronger partnerships, accelerate innovation, and contribute even a small way to America's national security and technological leadership, then I think we've accomplished exactly what we set out to do.
I love it. Well, we're super excited about partnering with you on this new AI conference that we're going to bring together here in the winter. And folks, that's a wrap. So thanks to all of you for joining me and Andrew McClure, the founder of the NCIF and a senior fellow here at NSI Cyber and Tech Center. And thanks to Keelan Wolf, Anna Haynes, Grace Trice, Claude Jennings, and the entire NSI CTC team for helping producing today's episode. Be on the lookout every Monday and Wednesday this summer between July 4th and Labor Day for more Control F episodes featuring sessions from this year's National Cyber Innovation Forum. And as you know, we're on all your favorite streaming platforms from Apple Podcasts to Spotify. And we're also on YouTube where you can find a video of today's episode. And as always, if you like what you heard or saw on YouTube, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.